everyone to the Existential Detectives channel. Today we cover the houses, signs, and planetary rulers of zodiac. This presentation is for all those who find themselves drawn towards astrology and are flirting with the idea of interpreting energies of their own charts. It will provide you with a comprehensive information on the flavors of the signs, houses, and planetary rulers. And that sounds like a lot. In most cases, astrologers will segment it and we'll talk about houses separately, and we'll talk about the planetary rulers separately, and we'll talk about signs separately. However, one of the natural laws that governs in astrology is the law of interconnectedness. Hence, if we learn the energy of that planet that governs that particular sign, we'll learn more about the sign itself and about that particular house and the signification of that house in the zodiac. Hence, today we're going to do just that. And before we start with the houses, signs, and planets, let's talk about those natural laws that we should be aware of before starting to analyze our chart. Okay, so they are the laws of nature, as mentioned before. Some of them, one of them, first of them is the law of cause and effect. Action causes reaction. I believe we're all familiar with that. And then, and this happens in time of the soul evolution. So it doesn't have to be limited to this particular birth. It could be a cause that was started several lifetimes ago, and its energies and effects are manifesting now and are there for us to become conscious of them. So the next natural law that governs here is the law of polarity duality. So we have pluses and minuses, negatives and positives, male and female. So there's gender there as well. We'll try and make a conscious attempt of not interpreting negative in that connotation, but interpreting it as a non-divisible part of the positive, the light and darkness, cathode and anode. We need both parts for the battery for our remote control to work. We can't just have plus and plus, minus and minus. We have to have both. The planets also can have a gender, but in terms of energetic potential, they have female, more passive, male, aggressive, Venus or moon, passive, passivity, reflection, sun, male, Mars, male. Some of those things you'll be able to intuit, and I do encourage you to rely on your intuition and to use association to get the deeper knowledge on this, because we're all reservoirs of knowledge. And I encourage you to think about and meditate on those things and arrive to conclusions by yourself. There's rhythm. Astrology is based on cycles, like cycles of evolution and maturity, and vibration. So the planets will not compel us, force us to do anything, even though we're tempted to express ourselves that way. And even though sometimes it feels that way, that the planets are sort of ganging up on us and everything, all the horrible things happen at at the same time. But it's because the planets are agents of change. They initiate change. So based on the vibration that we exert, and that is also based on the soul, that instinct towards evolution, towards evolving, towards becoming more conscious. So astrology, as I see it, is a science, an AI. It's an ancient science, an ancient wisdom that helps us with understanding our soul's evolutionary path. Right. Okay, let's get back to the concrete things. The things that are concrete, the things that are visible, are signs and houses and this zodiac wheel. So how do we get here? How did the ancients calculate our rising sign, the sign that we begin with? The wheel begins with the rising sign. How do you calculate the rising sign? As most of you know, a rising sign is calculated based on the exact time, date, and place of birth. And how do we do that? All right. Let me show you exactly what it is. So, okay, this is in the first image on the left-hand side, we have the horizon line. Yeah, when we look, we can see the horizon line extending upwards, and we cannot see, but horizon line intersects with the line, with the point, better to say point, of the ecliptic. What is an ecliptic? Ecliptic is an apparent path of the sun as observed from Earth. Astrology is geocentric, not heliocentric, not based on the sun. It's based, we put the Earth in the center, we put the human being in the center, and then we observe everything that happens to that point, relative to that point. Going back to the ecliptic line, so the horizon will intersect with the degree of the ecliptic. We're going to learn the traditional astrology, ancient astrology. So according to the ancient astrology, every sign is a constellation, a group of stars, has 30 degrees. So think about it. Look, there's 12 constellation on the ecliptic line. So wherever the horizon line crosses, intersects that degree on the ecliptic and the constellation, therefore sign on the ecliptic, it will give us our ascendant sign. Let's take this little constellation of Sagittarius, put it here, and imagine this is where horizon line touches the sign on the ecliptic. It's the Sagittarius sign. So a person born at exactly that time will have, let's say it reached the horizon, touched it on the 13th degree of Sagittarius. So your rising sign, your ascendant will be 13 degrees of Sagittarius. In time, it changes until it reaches 29th degree of Sagittarius, and then the totally different constellation starts. We can also have planets here. Like here, look, this person has a moon rising. Look how horizon line crosses the intersects with the ecliptic. Exactly. So this person will have moon exact conjunct their ascendant sign, and that has a meaning. So planets that are found here at birth are very significant. We have to pay attention, and we have to really learn these planets if we have planets on the ascendant, because they affirm our personality. So let's talk about the ascendant. Ascendant, as I said, the first sign has the energy, remember, energy of Mars, energy of Aries, the first sign of zodiac. But don't get it mixed up. It doesn't mean that all the people will be born with Aries ascendant. No, it can be Cancer, any ascendant, any constellation. But it will have the energy of initiation, of being born, getting a body. What that the concrete manifestation, what ascendant is, it's the way, it's the vehicle the soul has chosen to manifest its full potential in this world. It's like a rudder on a boat. So the little boat is going, down a river. So the rudder is the ascendant that's going to kind of stir it in that direction. It's going to give it flavor. It's the way that most of the times it's explained as the way that other people see us. It is true. It's the way we project ourselves. It's not who we really are deep down. Even though this is the measuring point, that's where we start all the measurement in the chart. Technically speaking, it's fixed, right? That's it. You take a snapshot, horizon line meets the constellation at that degree. That's your snapshot. You get all the planets in their position. Those are the cards you've been dealt, and you deal with them throughout your life. But when it comes to psychological perspective, it's the most mutable. Mutable means changeable, most fluid part of the chart. Why? Because through our evolution, we with affirming the ascendant, affirming that position, the planets in transit will affirm our personality, our persona. So it's not who we really are, it's how other people see us, how we project ourselves. So when you are guessing someone's sign, most of the people think that they're guessing their sun sign, like, are you an Aries, or she must be a Scorpio, she's so secretive or paranoid, or I don't know, she's a Leo, look at her hair. We are not guessing their sun sign. Actually, we're interacting mentally, trying to figure out um, their sign, their ascendant sign, not their sun sign. When you do that, that's what you're doing. It's our parents. So as we evolve, as we grow older, we get to become who we really are more and more. And planets in transit interact with that position. They, as I said, look back at the law, they don't compel, they just vibrate. And they are the agents of change. Whenever they touch that point, we change. We're meant to change. We're meant to fluctuate. We go sort of steps back, steps forward until we really calibrate and figure out who we really are. When Saturn comes here, I'm going to mention Saturn, not all the other planets. When Saturn comes here at the age of 28, approximately, or 30, when it interacts with the ascendant, this is when we solidify and become more and more who we really are. We never not we never fully do become who we really are, because it's a process. But when Saturn comes here, it becomes solid. It becomes a foundation of your ego. It becomes your ego foundation. So all the fake stuff will go and will go through episodes of huge disappointments and will be tweaked by the environment. You're going to get feedback of what you're projecting out there. And Saturn is a quote unquote cruel planet, I would say just planet. So that when Saturn interacts with the ascendant, that's when we reach that maturity. We realize what are our limitations and boundaries. Saturn has a ring. Let's do the association technique. So when you close your eyes, you think about the ring, you think about Saturn. What is a ring? Ring is a membrane. Think about the cell, an organism, a membrane, and then let's go deeper. What does a membrane do? What is the purpose of the membrane? Membrane is it gives a shape to the cell. It also gives it it serves as a protector, as a guardian. So if the membrane lets viruses and particles enter, the cell is going to die. So that's what Saturn does. Saturn is our membrane. So that's when we realize our own limitations and other people's limitations. So we go back and forth, we tweak it, calibrate it until we kind of get that down to earth shape. So Saturn kind of earths us, makes us human, therefore flawed. That's it's also a sobering moment, but that later on in life gives you a lot of strength. Okay, let me see. The first house is represented by the element. Every house has an element, natural element. So we're talking about the natural houses. And naturally, the first house is ruled by the planet Mars, and the element is fire. Yeah, birth is signified by fire, initial spark, projection, launching into the world, into the flesh. Yeah, getting the body. So we got the body, and now we move to the second house. Before we do that, I want to talk about Mars a little bit because it's all associated with the sign. Mars is a warrior, is a protector, male principle, represents the action, taking action, protecting, and sometimes aggression as well. And it represents the sign of Aries. So Aries is exactly that way. So wherever in your zodiac chart you have Aries, that's where you're going to demonstrate initiative in real life. Let's say someone has an Aries in the 11th house or in the 5th house. In the 11th house, let's say 11th house could also, one of the manifestations is friendships. So they could be really outgoing, and they easily make friends, and because the Aries, that energy is in the 11th house. Or it could be in the 12th house. So we could have that, contradictions sometimes. So remember the essential flavors of the planet. Mars, color is red, element is fire, sign is Aries, and number is number one. Yeah, initiation. So when you think about it that way, it's like a big puzzle. It's so interesting, isn't it? And we move on to the second house. Second house represents our early childhood and that part of life where we get our needs met. A little toddler, a little baby. So the birth has taken place, and now the baby gets to know its surrounding and mom and dad, essentially, and by touch, by taste. It also represents the mouth. So the baby gets to know the world by putting everything into their mouth in relation to self. That's how the baby gets to know itself. Also, the needs, the basic human needs, need for affection, starting from the essential ones like food and comfort and shelter, and then reaching the higher needs like um, emotional needs being met, encouragement, support, and ability to trust the world out there, that someone will be there to provide food for you when you're hungry, that someone will be there to hold you when you're crying, that someone will be there to give you warmth when you're cold. So that's the second house. So let's start from the beginning. So let's talk about the first. There come needs being met or not met. After that, we develop based on that, not in that sequence, but based on that, we develop our self-esteem, worth, and value. The ruler of this house is Venus, And the element is earth, because this part of our life needs to have stability. Earth is fixed. It's not supposed to change. We build up on that foundation later on in life. So Venus, in its essence, rules those needs being met, but in astrology is oftentimes interpreted as the planet of love, luxury, comforts, all of those outer manifestations. I think we should always entertain the essential, spiritual, and essential signification of the planet, because everything that materializes based on that essential idea. So the idea here is to have your needs met, to be able to develop healthy self-esteem, to be able to rely essentially on yourself. And then based on that, you get your income. You get paid exactly, it will show you how you, where do you put yourself? Where do you value yourself? Your income, your money, monetary gains will be the reflection of that. And you'll know in different stages of your life, you'll be earning more or less depending on that energy, because money essentially is energy. And that's your second house, the house of early childhood conditioning, house of needs being met, ruled by Venus, value, very important house. All of those houses are important. And then what flows from the second house is naturally, by process, flows the third house. So baby now starts to learn how to speak and communicate. I mean, it doesn't start speaking right away, but it starts communicating non-verbally and then later on verbally. And it needs that reflection. Yeah, it needs that like mimicking back from its parent, from baby's parents. It needs that feedback. That's the third house. It represents communication. It is ruled by Mercury, essentially communication. It is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is a messenger of gods, Hermes. He is the closest planet to the sun, messenger of gods. It doesn't have a gender. It is kind of genderless. So if you close your eyes and you meditate on that, on Mercury, and if we now find out that it doesn't have a gender, and we connected with intellect, we connected with communication. Mercury goes to both worlds. It interacts in our subconscious and conscious. Subconscious when it goes retrograde, and conscious in its normal movement. So this house is also represents our neighbors and our siblings, the people we interact with, we communicate with. This is where we kind of exercise our perceptions. You know, in teenage years and when we are students, when we're studying, it represents also studying, learning, interacting, communicating. We always undergo different stages, right? And this house is unlike the second house that is fixed, stable. This house is mutable. It means prone to change. The nature, the natural flavor of this house is changeable. So, and there is a reason for it. Our perceptions will vary and change throughout our life, and they're meant to do that. So depending on the sign that you have in the third house, it could be Pisces, right? And Pisces has a flavor of passivity and has a flavor of an intuitive, telepathic, almost telepathic communication. So just use that flavor, put it in the second house, put it in the third house, and that will give you an idea how this person communicates. If it's your boss, or if it's your partner, it'll give you a huge insight into what's the primary way of exchanging ideas with you. And then you can adopt to it and meet them where they are. That's the third house, the Mercury's house. Intellect, reasoning, learning, etc., etc. And then we reach the fourth house. Fourth house is the cardinal house. So when we calculated the ascendant, automatically we got the first and the seventh house. The opposite house is the ascendant. And then 90 degrees from there, the fourth house is a house of home and family family roots and family heritage. You can calculate it automatically. And then opposite of the fourth house is the 10th house, the house of visible achievements. So the fourth house is the midnight of the chart. It's all dark. And most of the people's lives, this part of the chart is the most hidden. We won't talk about it. No one will know about it. It represents family, heritage, ancestors, roots, that sort of like DNA stuff that um, is in your DNA as well. The stuff that your ancestors did or didn't do, that is up to you to realize, or that is up to you to manifest or change or shift. It's all there. It also represents the mother. The ruling planet is a moon, and it's a water. The element is water, so it represents emotions, nurturing as well. So all of those, um, you know how we kind of inherit certain traits, and sometimes we inherit the entire life of our mothers or grandmothers or grandfathers, and those patterns, especially in, especially, I wouldn't say especially, I think only the negative ones will repeat themselves generationally if they're not brought into consciousness. So one of our objectives, one of our goals, missions should be to um, change those habits or those patterns, behavioral patterns or life patterns that are repeating in the fourth house. They could be really detrimental. They could be really dark. It could be addictions. It could be the issues of low self-esteem on mothers or fathers' side of the family. That will also additionally be uh, represented by the energy of the second house and the eighth house. But our goal is to accept them, without judgment, and transform them, transmute them, and 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 that's how we engage with the energies of the fourth house. So if we have planets there, again, we should pay more attention and closely interpret the aspects, the influences of other planets that the fourth house has. That will give us more clues on how to successfully get over the family lineage, heritage, and those things. I'm not sure if I explained this, but a first house, seventh house, I mentioned the cross, the cardinal cross. So let me just go through it one more time. The cardinal cross, first, seventh, fourth, 10th house, is called cardinal, is because this is what it's like, a spine of our chart, of our personality, of us. That's what carries the entire chart. So we should pay special attention. Why is it called cardinal? Cardio. What does that associate? What is that? Do you have any associations when I say that? Cardinal means cardiovascular disease. It's something to do with the heart, right? So what kind of an organ? Let's go like that. Let's try it by the methodology of association. We'll get to some conclusions. So heart is a vital organ. Without it, we wouldn't be able to survive. So these are also the houses that are cardinal. It means like essential. We need them. Like we can't, they carry the whole thing. They carry everything. They're the spine. Done. Right. The fourth house Now we move into another quadrant. So these were the first four. Now we do the second four houses. As I said, everything is a cycle. Yeah, everything goes according to the natural law in astrology. The fifth house is, again, we start with fire. Fiery house belongs to the sign of Leo. Planet is the sun. It is the luminary of our chart. We have two luminaries, sun and the moon. So the fifth house represents, after we kind of experienced all the previous stages of evolution, we feel confident to sort of invest ourselves and invest what we have, the talents we have, into the world. So we want to give out something, and it is also called the house of children, or project, or hobbies, or creativity. Leo, look at this image. Maybe it gives you more information about it. So children are the most obvious way that people project themselves and create something. It's the most visible creation. However, it could be anything. Gambling and speculation and investments also belong to this house. Why? There is a logic to it, of course, because it's time to give something out, that give our talents out to the world. We want to be useful. And what I'm doing right now is the activity of the fifth house. I am kind of filtering the knowledge that I have through my own filters and giving it out into the world. So that's your fifth house for you. And Leo is the sign. As we all know, the sun is the center of our galaxy. It could be the most sort of narcissistic and egoistic sign placement in our chart. That's where we need to shine. Basically, that's how we invest ourselves, and the courage to invest ourselves into the world and create something. Before I continue, every sign has its optimal meaning the best, optimal manifestation, and there are gradients, and then shadow manifestation. You know, the principle of polarity. Shadow, I'm not going to say negative, I'm going to say shadow. So in this presentation, I haven't mentioned all of the shadow aspects of each sign. However, we'll tackle that in the following videos. Okay, so fire, and then after the fire comes the element of earth again, yeah, earth, and the sign of Virgo. So Virgo is the sixth sign, and we're talking now about the sixth house. And it represents the service that we give to the world. And what does that mean? And it sounds like so random. What does it mean exactly? People will tell you it's the sun, it's the house of health, it's the house of enemies, house of pets, house of servant. It is all that, but why? Why does it have this meaning and this significance? How is it related to our consciousness and our evolution of our consciousness? Well, in the second house, we get the body, we get familiarized with our body, we have our needs met. But however, throughout the process, our body, our health needs maintenance. So in the sixth house, we get to maintain or fix our health. The ruler is Mercury. In this case, Mercury as a healer, as Hermes Trismegistus, the healer, the remedy man, someone who has the ancient wisdom of medicine. Yeah, so that's where we restore ourselves. We also the house of forming good habits. Normally, for most people, they go through the phases of disturbing the equilibrium of their health and then finding remedies to fix it. That's your Virgo for you. That's what Mercury does here. Mercury is a healer here, the medicine man, Merlin. And you can see in this image that we have some what do you say, the alternative medicine. We also have the traditional medicine, and we have the modern medicine. So it's all represented in the sixth house. So we need to fix our body. We need to introduce, we should introduce good habits in our life. It also represents habits and health. And then after we fix ourselves, after we are continue to fix ourselves, because it's a process and it can never be taken for granted or given up upon. We never come to the point and say, okay, we are healthy now and that's it. We continue, right? Then we give that knowledge out into to others. So we heal and fix. We actually provide them with the tools to fix themselves. This is what ultimately what Virgo does. It's represented by a virgin carrying a little branch. So it has nothing to do with female virginity. It has to do with that purity, with the Vestal virgins. Vestal virgins were called these women that in temples that were like sort of like muses, like those the feminine principle that signifies the light of healing and improving. So it's a very benevolent energy. Um, and since Mercury is there, we can say that we can say more about Virgo as well. And in its shadow manifestation, it could mean, and oftentimes carries a lot of self-doubt and a lot of self-criticism. So that criticism is turned upon themselves and then reflected onto others. So you can easily conclude like whoever is extremely critical of others, their inner talk is exactly like that. Very the Virgo. So that inner voice, the inner critic, is also associated with the Virgo energy. That inner critic that follows you and keeps, keeps making you feel not worthy of, not good enough or something. In the higher manifestation, Mercury represents, in this case, in Virgo, represents improvement and self-improvement, keeps you going. Yeah, you're constantly trying to improve your health and reach that ideal. But in the negative form, it's criticism, self-criticism, not being good enough, concentrating, focusing on the details and trying to figure out reasons for not continuing something. And for instance, the that shadow manifestation of Virgo is depicted in the story about a caterpillar that I'm going to tell you a story because I think it's a good story to describe Virgo. So the story of Caterpillar. Caterpillar was merrily walking down the forest path, and then one of the animals asked her, "Excuse me, so can you please tell me, like, how do you walk? Do you like you have like 100 legs or 1,000 legs? So how do you walk? Do you move the second leg first, and then you move on the right hand side, and then you move the 98th leg on the left hand side, or like how does that work? Can you explain it to me? How do you do that?" And the moment the caterpillar started to think about and and rationalize the way it moved, like it got paralyzed and it never walked again. So that's your Virgo for you. The negative, the shadow manifestation of Virgo. Of course, nothing is fake, nothing is black and white. It's just something to be aware of. And I think story is perfectly analogous with how we stir the waters of Virgo. Okay, and now we reach the next cardinal house, the seventh house. So we have reached the seventh house, the house of Libra. Think of the the glyph, the signature of Libra is the scales. And it's the only glyph that doesn't contain anything human in it or an animalistic in it. It's not represented by an animal like Taurus, Aries, Cancer. There's a reason for it. Libra is the opposition of Aries, 180 degrees of Aries, part of the cardinal cross, ruled by Venus. So Venus rules two houses, just like Mercury. It ruled the second house, remember? We went through the second house signification. And now Libra rules the seventh house, the house of partnership. And those partnerships are official partnerships, like signed partnerships. You can see here a marriage partnership. So let's go back to the glyph. Why is it represented by scales only? Because in partnership, there is a balance to be maintained. Principle of Venus of giving and receiving, like a number 8, giving and receiving. Yeah. So that is one of the principles that is really difficult for maintenance after marriage or in any partnership. However, when the balance is disturbed, you'll be so quick to manifest in different forms of diseases or conflicts or arguments or divorces. So any kind of formal, it doesn't have to represent a love partnership of marriage. It could represent a business partnership. So wherever you have two sides shaking hands, it's Libra. So Venus, as I said, the giving and receiving has to be balanced here. And it has to be reciprocated. But it also has to have a form of being official, like it has to be signed and agreed upon. So let's use the first house and try to interpret remember the principle of polarity? We can just use it here and I'll show you how. Let's use the first house of Aries, energies of Aries, and compare it with the Libra. What is the opposition? Opposition. Me, I'm starting fire. This is air, again, air, yeah. So that means that it needs to be it needs to sort of change, shift and change. There are two parties to be satisfied, not just one. And Venus here represents mutuality, I guess. After we have entertained all of these developmental stages and the focus was on us, on our soul development, on mastering us. That's how it goes. First, you have to master yourself. Then you have to deal with others. And by the mechanism of mirroring, you will be showed on how well you did previously. Of course, when planets transit this point, the descendant or the seventh house or the point in the seventh house will be the descendant. It triggers all sorts of partnership related matters, marriage, breakup of marriage, etc., etc. And here I like to mention Dr. Carl Gustav Jung and his principle of projection, which just works marvelously here. So the great Dr. Carl Gustav Jung said that whatever we refuse, decline, become unconscious of within ourselves, whenever we turn the blind eye and don't want to see it, it's gonna come and face us directly in the face in another person by the mechanism of aversion, repulsion, or extreme attraction. And there's no other way around. That's how it works. So I'd also like to say that's why we should spend whatever necessary attention is needed in our fourth house and all the previous houses, so that we are as complete as possible within ourselves. When we meet others, that it won't be a projection, something that we haven't accomplished, and we accomplish it by marrying this person. And that's how young love works, for example. The romantic young love works. And normally people talk about the so-called completion and being completed by someone, but actually, this is my opinion. In my opinion, we have to avoid that idea of being completed by another. Otherwise, it will result in divorce, disappointment, disillusionment, da 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 da. So the only way we can reach the equilibrium is if we try to manifest and fulfill whatever potentials we have within us instead of satisfying them by merging with other. It causes resentment ultimately. So develop the self, acknowledge and bring the projection within the consciousness so you know about it. Okay, I am attracted to this person because I haven't fulfilled this, and this is the reason for the magnetic pull or magnetic push. Aversion works the same way too. Oh, I don't like her because blah blah. And an extreme aversion tells us so much about ourselves. So this house, I like to call it a house of where all the mirrors are. Yeah, it's amazing. The way that, I mean, can you imagine what kind of a higher intelligence got it to work this way in such a perfect way? Incredible. Okay, and then so we exit Libra and we enter into the water element of water, deep water, and the sign is Scorpio, represented by a ancient ruler, is old ruler before the Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto were discovered, was Mars, and it does have to do. It can be associated with Mars, but now that we know of Pluto, it can be closely associated with Pluto, and all of the Pluto descriptions of Pluto will help us to describe this house. So let's say you formed a official partnership, legal signed partnership with someone, and you start living with them. So that's when we reach the intimacy bit, and we reach sharing, and also because it's opposite to the second house, it's other people's resources, other people's finances, sharing, inheritance, all these areas where we have to kind of give up our own power and self-reliance and now trust others. It's really scary to do. It's a scary thing to do. So it is also the house of the occult and the house of um, all those things connected with the other realms, with things that are not seen or not visible. We go there. It's the house of death, ego death, and physical death, and hence the house of transformation. Because when we talk about death, essentially we talk about the death of the flesh. Because I hope we all know this: soul is eternal. So soul is eternal. It only changes forms. So it could, in the shadow, manifestation could represent litigations, inheritance issues, problems with the reproduction. It represents reproductive organs and sex. And well, when we mention this topic of sex is the ultimate surrender, right? So that's where we surrender into the other, which is really scary. Astrology is there as well, and the occult sciences as well. So Pluto gives a lot of huge reward after the journey into the unconscious. It gives a huge reward. So you have to get through that basement and spend some time there. I know there is like a necessary negative connotation, but then comes this amazing power. I believe most of us who have reached our adulthood, and adulthood to me is Saturn touching the ascendant, like 28, 30 years old. Um, all of us have gone through some sort of a hardship or some sort of a um, catastrophic, quote unquote, catastrophic event where we went through a lot, and then we've come out on the other side. And think of here we can see the phoenix, and that's most commonly associated with the Scorpio sign. Regeneration, phoenix. I mean, it burns in ashes, but then it is born again. So remember that feeling when you came out of it, and then you're like, wow. In one of the Haruki Murakami books, there is one of the characters talks about storms, and he says that after you go through a storm or a tornado in your life, you're never the same. Like you come out different. So that's the thing, the transformation, and that's what this house is all about. Chaos that precedes birth, new birth. Okay, so we finish with the second quadrant. We finish again with the water. Acknowledge the pattern. We finished with water. It was first quarter finished with Cancer, water, and then now the second quarter sorry, finishes with Scorpio, water, and now again we begin with the spark again, fire, the ninth house belonging to the sign of Sagittarius. Planet is Jupiter, and it represents, as this little image suggests, our connection with God. I'm gonna say God. I could say source or source consciousness or creator energy. It's God. It's also religion. It's however we perceive God in our life. And I don't care, even the people who say they're agnostic and they don't believe in God or whatever that means, we have different interpretations. All of us have that reaction in our body almost. Consciousness, the feeling of guilt. What is that? Is that something that comes from society? There are things that are inherently in us, and there's a way that God speaks to us through us. So that's the ninth house. Fire. Jupiter is the great, known as a great benefic. Benefic means someone does good. So good, yeah, the good doer. However, in this case, you may have, because we are only human and all of these energies are filtered through our flesh. You could actually have too much of Jupiter as well. It just enhances whatever it touches. It could be so-called good or so-called bad or a little bit challenging, right? But in this case, it represents the religion of faith, connection with God, represents high morals, highly moral planet, represents our teachers, all of our experiences abroad, all of our experiences that involve expanding our horizons and our knowledge. It represents foreign languages, higher education, university studies, all of those things are in this house of Jupiter. Again, we have shadow manifestations. Let's see. belonging to a cult. And we have the ultimate manifestation, becoming a guru or manifesting your life as a prophet, receiving messages. So, okay, so that was Sagittarius for you and the fire of Sagittarius. Then we have the 10th house, which is part of that cross of evolution, cardinal, remember the heart. The 10th house that belongs to a Capricorn. Capricorn, the planet that rules Capricorn is Saturn. We talked about Saturn a little bit, the planet with a ring. And the reason it has a ring, uh, in this house is where we are seen and observed by others. It's noon, so we are very visible. And what we have accomplished is very visible to everyone. So it represents our status, our profession, something called dharma, something that we are meant here to do. Manifesting that what you're here to do. And we're all here to do something, regardless of what it is or how insignificant it may seem in human terms. We're all here to manifest it as best as we can. So that's the Earth house of Capricorn. It's where you reap the reward. You reap what you have sown. That's one of the sayings associated with Saturn. It will reward you, but it will delay stuff for you. It will make you work for it. Um, and it will give you the consequences clearly, visibly in your status and your career. Most of the people in common astrology associated with career changes or career improvements. Or, yeah. Okay. It's opposition, and let's talk about the opposition as well. It's necessary. Opposition is a Cancer, fourth house. So, what we achieve in life and the status or symbols or material goods, Earth, is based on that, on home, on family. Yeah, the security we have established within our family, and how well did we deal with all the ancestral stuff, including, I mean, constantly our emotions. So it's balance again. And then we reach the 11th house that belongs to the planet of planet Uranus, modern ruler, and ancient ruler Saturn again. Before those outer planets were discovered, Saturn was ruler of this house. 11th house of associations, exactly opposite the 5th house. So all of those investments will be visible in the 11th house. It represents our organizations, societies we belong to, wishes and dreams fulfillment for the higher good. It's always a society. It's opposite from Leo, so it's not about me anymore. It's about the imprint, the stamp that I leave behind me for future generations or for my society. It's impersonal. It's an air sign. Aqua, even it contains the word aqua, water, but it's the water of consciousness of human evolution. And 11th house is the house of groups. That's how to describe it in a nutshell. Okay, and then we finally come into the water element again, the 12th house. We begin with fire, we end with water, the end of the flesh, the end of the body. 12th house belongs to Pisces, two fish swimming in the opposite direction. Yeah. So what does that mean? The ruler is Neptune or Jupiter, the traditional ruler. It represents that the overall general energy is it represents everything that has to do with a non-material, because it's opposite from the earth house of Virgo. Non-material. And remember how Virgo likes, remember that caterpillar that was thinking about the way it moved? So intellect, thinking, rationalizing. Well, Pisces is exactly the opposite. Pisces is just letting go. It's that this principle that we are using right now, association. Look at this image. Um, you know, the Rorschach's drawings. Look at it and tell me, what are your associations? What are you thinking about when you look at this? So this is the Pisces sign, imagination, creation through imagination, nothing physical, nothing exact, nothing material. So you can't catch it. It's like the waters of the unconscious. You'll find shadow manifestations and also the, of course, the optimal manifestations that involve the spark of genius and getting ideas after dreaming about something and then creating it. Also acting. The entire Hollywood is ruled by Neptune, Pisces. Negative side, delusions, all sorts of addictions, alcoholic drug addictions, everything that helps us kind of deal with the material world that we use as a crutch negatively, like alcohol, for example. But a lot of great painters and great artists and writers were born with significant planets in this sign. And we have to be careful with Neptune because it opposes where we live nowadays, right? In this world of science and concrete things and material wealth and trying to prove ourselves and our success by the gains, by something we can touch and feel and enjoy. So that's why we have to be really careful about wherever Pisces is. It needs special attention. It's hard to maneuver these waters of Pisces. And that's where our presentation on houses, signs, and planetary rulers end. I hope this presentation has given you, has inspired you to cast your chart. You can go to astro.com or astrotheme.com and look at the houses in your chart. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them in the comments below. And thank you again. It was a privilege having you as my viewer. And all the best until next time. Have a good day.